phrase photographer's paradise should always be treated with suspicion. A few considerations should be taken into account when you're finalizing your shooting ideas. These might be a few things that make the difference between a really good day's shooting and a nightmare for everyone involved. Firstly, as mentioned before, for glamour photography, a reasonably private location will be very helpful. Now consider access. An absolutely perfect location on a cliff overlooking a body of water might be inspiring on a casual visit. But now think of it in terms of carrying in gear, props, wardrobe, makeup, reflectors, tripods. Suddenly, the once ideal location is beginning to sound an awful lot like the nightmare we talked about. Another often disappointing scenario is finding a spectacular location only to find that it supplies just one photographic opportunity. Try to use locations that offer a variety of backgrounds, structures, even textures and colors, so that you can keep traveling between setups to a bare minimum. This will keep your model enthusiastic, and remember, it's how it looks on film that really counts. Another element that must be considered is the direction of the sun at particular times of day. Knowing where the light falls at certain times will help you plan the order of your shoot. The last thing you need on location or in the studio are surprises. To eliminate any guesswork, a very detailed agenda should be created that outlines every step of the day's activities. Ideally, the list will also account for props, clothing, meals, dressing and makeup areas, as well as any other situation that is particular to the shoot. Remember, it's the photographer's responsibility to make sure all runs smoothly during the photo session. Without question, the model is the most important element in glamour photography. You may be asking yourself, well, where do I find an attractive model for my photo session? Well, that's where I'll begin. Basically, there are two ways to go about selecting the model. The first way is the services of friends and amateurs. The second is to hire models from a professional modeling agency. Since more than likely you're just starting out, the best bet may be for you to go the less expensive route of using amateur and friends as your models. Using an amateur model has more advantages than one may think. Money, of course, is one reason, but you may also discover somebody. It's always the dream of a photographer to find a fresh new talent that has not been seen and make him or her, as well as yourself, a little richer. Also, it will be a learning situation for both parties. Your model will gain experience in front of the camera, and you will gain that ever so important experience of directing a photo session. To find amateur talent willing to work in a glamour setting, try contacting a local dance or theater troupe. Or possibly you can try a musical group that might need publicity or marquee photos. After exhausting your own pool of friends and acquaintances, you shouldn't be afraid to approach a stranger in a public place. Of course, this must be done with the utmost in professionalism. If you get embarrassed easily, you may want to avoid this tact. However, many new faces are discovered this way. If you should see an attractive person on the street or at the mall, the most important thing to do is to adopt a very professional manner. Introduce yourself and briefly tell him or her what you do, and tell them about your upcoming session and how you think they could help and what you hope to accomplish. Then offer your card and ask the person to think about it. Conclude by asking them to telephone you if they're interested. As you can see, this leaves quite a bit to chance. If you can afford the services of a professional model, they will offer some very distinct advantages. More often than not, the trained fashion or glamour model will have various looks. That's to say, she won't only have one facial expression, hairstyle, or pose. These models all have good command of makeup, hairstyling, and the understanding of good posing techniques. As a beginning glamour photographer, you'll be able to learn many things from experienced models. Now, all of this does not mean that you can't get a good picture with an amateur model, but locating and having a higher rate of success comes more often than not with a professional model. Something else that you should be aware of when deciding on an amateur or professional. Professional models will be very expensive, and if a nude or semi-nude session is planned, the fee for your model will jump up in price considerably. Also be aware that an agency fee and casting fee are industry norms, and that can add another 15 to 20% to the cost. Pretty spendy way to get experience. Another possible option would be to contact your local talent agency and see if you couldn't take pictures of their models for free. This way you'll be adding to your portfolio while gaining the needed experience of directing a photo shoot. Also, your models will be adding to their portfolios as well. Another important point, make sure you clear up any details such as payment and any other technical arrangements prior to the photo session. That way there'll be no surprises. Now all of this is leading to directing the photo session. It's very important for you to put the model at ease. If you're working with an amateur model, then start slow. Don't move any faster than the model feels comfortable with. Oftentimes, a model may have the impression that glamour shoots are much the same as high fashion sessions. Actually, the glamour setting uses a much more deliberate posing technique than the high fashion. Your model should realize that slower movements are required, and you must direct her into the proper situation. When working with a more seasoned model, you could give them the general attitude or feeling that you're after, and they will begin modeling in that vein. I'd like to mention to you that you, as the photographer, have the responsibility to become a good director, especially when working with amateur talent. They will look to you for guidance in every way, from posing to makeup to wardrobe. As you become a more polished as a director, the task of getting from the model what you want will become easier and easier. And getting the image on film that you've envisioned in your mind will be a much simpler task as well. Let's turn this way just a little bit, Robbie. Great. Right here, me. The best way I know to bring the natural glamour out in any person or subject is to concentrate on their strongest points. If the model is unsure herself of what to accentuate, then constantly reaffirm the positive elements of the model. This is the case for professional talent as well as amateur. The only difference will be that the professional model will probably have a pretty good idea of her strong suits. And the way you'll become proficient as a director will be to practice, practice, practice. Finally, test shots. You will get to the point either as an amateur or professional photographer where you'll need to create test shots of selected models. This will also give you a very good idea of the model's strength and weaknesses. From these pictures, you can arm yourself with the knowledge to use in the actual session. Study these photos for successful poses and expressions, and also look out for any visible defects. Remember your model's best features and nurture them throughout the actual session. In the next section of the program, I'd like to introduce you to Rena Tom. She's a makeup and hairstylist. She's here to give us a few basic techniques on makeup and hairstyling. The purpose of this section is not to make you a makeup and hairstylist yourself, but instead to give you a better understanding of the elements involved and how these elements apply to your subject. These elements are as crucial to your photo session as lighting, pose, and her wardrobe. They should not be overlooked or minimized. Our model for today is Dory Cheney. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started.
When applying makeup for professional photography, it is very important to always moisturize the face thoroughly. Moisturizing the face is actually the first step in applying makeup. It's very, very important to moisturize the face thoroughly. This will prevent what I call a slip. A slip is when the foundation sticks to one part of the face and does not stick to another part of the face because of oil already in the model's face or the oil content in the pores. So it is very important that the entire face has the same amount of moisture, and this will give the concealer and foundation moisture to stick to on the face and give you a fuller coverage. Concealer is the second step. Concealer is basically a product used to cover up blemishes and give an even look to the face. The concealer should be 2 to 3 shades lighter than the model's skin tone. It's also used to lighten up under the eyes and any shaded or discoloration around lips and other parts of the face, whether it be freckles or... The foundation is the third step. The foundation is basically used to complete the even-toned face. So it is very important to choose a correct foundation and shade color. The best way to match up a color to a model's face is to check the chin line or neckline of the model, making sure that the foundation color you will be applying will be complementary to that line and there won't be a large difference in shade or color. The fourth step is powder. Some stylists prefer to use powder between the concealer and then after the foundation. I personally believe that you get a better even coloring if you apply the powder after you've applied both concealer and foundation. I also apply the powder after I've put on the rest of the color, blush and makeup, so to speak, and before I apply the last coat of mascara, because this also adds a little bit more thickness to the lashes and it seals off the color of the blush and eyeshadow. Contouring is the fifth step and actually is the first actual application of color to the face. Contouring is used to add definition to the face, how severe you want it or how light you want it. It's up to you. It's up to the mood you're trying to set with the shoot. It's very important to make sure that everything blends nicely and it does look naturally. Contouring is usually added to the right under the cheekbones, sometimes to lift up the chin a little bit and to form an oval look around the face. Eyeshadow is the next step. You can use as many colors or as little colors as you'd like in the eyeshadow. I personally prefer to use a 3-color system. The first color being very, very light, I would apply over the entire lid from lid to brow. The second color, I use a medium between the light and the darkest, and I would apply in a vertical motion from the bottom of the lid to the brow on the inside of the eye. By inside, I mean closest to the nose. The darkest color I would use on the outside of the eye from lid to brow, giving a 3 vertical color. Sometimes I will add a bit of a blush or the same color of the blush I'll be using to add a bit of definition to the eye and have it stand out. But the 3 vertical color system tends to open up the lid and gives the eye more of a depth, which is really important in photography. Following the eyeshadow, I always use eyeliner, whether it be a brownish black or brown in photography. Depending on how you want your eye shaped and the shape of the model's eye, sometimes you'll line the entire top lid and sometimes you'll line the entire bottom lid or 3/4 of the lid. On Dory, I lined the entire top lid and then 3/4 of the bottom lid going into the inner eye. Again, it all depends on the model's shape of the eye and the effect and mood you're trying to create. The first application of mascara should be in a brown or black color, especially for photography. It should be thin and light, making sure there aren't any clumps, and each hair is divided by using a mascara brush or comb. Following the mascara, and the 8th step is working on the brows. You can use anything from a hair mousse to clear mascara, which is what I use on the brows. It's important that the brows are brought to an upright full position, and of course filling them in with a brow pencil is sometimes useful in creating a full brow look. Moving away from the eyes and to step number 9 is blush. The application of blush also constitutes the mood you're trying to create, so please keep that in mind. Following the second application of powder, we will begin with step number 11, which is lip liner. It is important to have a lip liner with the same tone color as a lipstick you will be applying to the model. When applying lip liner to the lips, always remember what kind of mood you're trying to create. If you want a thicker lip or a fuller lip, apply the lip liner just outside the lip line. And of course, if you want a thinner lip, apply the lip liner just inside the lip line. It is important to have a nice, easy, straight line when lining the lips. This will give you a course to follow when applying the lipstick. Lipstick is a 12th step in applying makeup. Now, it is very important, again, to make sure the shade of the lipstick matches the shade of the model's skin tone and what she's wearing. Lipstick is best often applied with a lip brush. And after applying lipstick to the entire upper and lower lip, try taking some powder or lip gloss in the center of the bottom lip and the center of the top lip to add a little bit more of a fuller look. The final step is mascara, again using the same color you used previously, giving a nice thin final coating. The reason being is this will give it a nice thick appearance to the lashes without making them look cakey. Technique is individual to each stylist. And remember, these are just a few basic steps to help you, as a photographer, achieve the image you've envisioned.
Like many variables involved with creating beautiful glamour or boudoir photographs, hairstyles are dictated by the type of image you're trying to create. Of course, blow dryers, gels, mousses, and curling irons are all implements to achieve the desired results. Most models will have a good feel for their own hair and will be able to style it in a way that it's needed. Now that Dory's in the studio, let's start working on our posing techniques. In this section, I'll walk you through a general overview of do's and don'ts on the headshot, the medium shot or 3/4 setup, the full length, and tips on full-length doubles. Keep in mind that when you direct a model through posing, that it's a very subjective art. There's not a standard set of poses that every photographer should use in every session. The tips you'll learn are meant to be a guide, so don't be afraid to break the rules or create new ones. Here are a few things to look for when working with your model. Of course, watch for healthy and shiny hair. Collarbones shouldn't be too pronounced. And if you're doing swimwear or boudoir, wait for the pressure marks from undergarments to disappear. Closely shaved or waxed legs are best. Facial makeup should blend well with body color. And also watch for creases around the armpits. Most models will be aware of a less than flat stomach, so you keep your eyes open for that too. Little things like dry skin, veins in the hands or legs, and tense back muscles could also distract from the glamorous image you're trying to create. As we go to work with Dory creating a headshot for her portfolio, keep in mind a few simple guidelines. First off, having a stool for your model will be very helpful. Also, a rather tall table might work well for her to lean on, just out of camera's view. But be careful not to let her lean too heavily on it, as it may cause an unbalanced shot. Let's get started by having your model sit in an elegant pose on the stool. This will give her a good solid posture to work from. Now, the best way for your model to start out will be to direct her to move her shoulders to whichever angle you desire. I suggest you take some full-frame shots with her shoulders perpendicular to the camera, some with her shoulders angled 3/4 to the camera, and finally have her angle her shoulders exactly parallel to the camera. These positions will accentuate the glamorous lines of clothing and give her a very natural look. Now try to encourage a tall but relaxed spine. as well as neck. The long, elegant neck position must be relaxed once achieved. This will reveal a very sensual and warm pose. If your model hunches her shoulders or dips her chin too far, you'll lose that very appealing neckline. The proper head and eye position and focus will make or break your photo session. Your model's head should be held up just slightly, not so much that you're looking up her nose, but just enough to keep the eyes bright and give the feeling of sophistication to the image. Of course, the position of your subject's head is determined by what you're trying to achieve in the finished product. But here are a couple of expressions that you might want to avoid. The hardest for the model to control will be the overexpression. This often creates problems in a couple of different areas. Her eyes will become nearly closed, her mouth might be a little too open, showing her tongue and bottom teeth, which is thought to conflict with the good classic glamour pose. Also, your model's eyes should be trained on the lens, not too open nor too closed. If your model is looking upward, that may expose the whites of the eyes too much. If the eyes are closed, well then you won't see the eye at all. Keep in mind that the body position is what sets the stage for a good pose, but the eyes are what makes that pose believable and alluring. Now let's pull out just a touch for the medium shot. Remember, the medium shot is much the same as the close-up, although you'll have much more body exposed to the frame. Therefore, you'll have more elements to consider. Now that you're dealing with a larger part of the model's body, a good idea will have the model angle her shoulders just a tiny bit away from the camera. This narrowing of the shoulders will add to the overall subtleness of the photograph. Also, a tall, relaxed neck is critical once again. As we've talked about a few times throughout this program, the final use of the photograph will often dictate the pose. For instance, if this medium shot was going to be the basis for an advertising layout, there'd be many things to be taken into consideration. Will there be a product incorporated into the shot? Will the model be wearing what's being advertised? Will he or she be lying down, seated, standing up? The list of variables seem to go on and on. But here are a few tips of some of the variables you may run across. If you're shooting a model with lingerie or just tightly fitting clothing, remember to direct your model into these situations. Her body should be relaxed, possibly a knee in the edge of the bed or a foot up on a raised prop of some type. This will give her body a very pleasing asymmetry. Keeping her torso straight to the camera, if you ask her to turn the shoulders away from the camera, also have her move her arm, that is furthest away from the camera, around behind her torso. This will expose a very clean body line. Be sure that the hands are held in a very feminine manner and that the fingers aren't spread out too severely. Classic glamour posing techniques say that you shouldn't have your model raise her arms above her head. Of course, that should be left to your discretion. There has been a great deal of latitude created in the last several years in all art forms. So if you feel that you must have your model raise her arms, by all means do so. You might find that you'll want her to keep her flat palms of her hands turned away from the camera. Long, slender hands can be very attractive. So try to accentuate this, not conceal it. Try to have the model tilt her head into a relaxed position. This will add to the soft quality of the photograph. When she does the tilt, make sure to keep the angular, elegant posture of the neck and spine. To make sure there is absolutely no distortion to this, train your lens directly to the center of the model's body. Also, as you set up the three-quarter pose, give your model room at the edge of the frame to move freely. I think the most important thing to remember in full-length photography is that you want to keep your model from pointing her arms and legs or knees directly at the camera. Doing this will enlarge the look of the limb. Remember, you're working in a two-dimensional medium, not three. Keeping the body balanced is another helpful tip, but balance doesn't mean symmetrical. When you shoot full body, you have the opportunity to create a very interesting visuals. Take advantage of that. One straight leg, one bent. If you ask her to stand perpendicular to the camera, legs together, make sure you see a little of the back leg. Also, if you direct your model into a pose that dictates that both arms be together, have her move one of her hips, perhaps. These are the type of elements that will take advantage of the two-dimensional medium. Other principles apply from other posing tips as well. Have your model turned, once again, a little 3/4 to the lens, and if you desire a more serious look, have her hold her head straight. If you're looking for something a little softer, a slight tilt of the head will convey that image. If you find yourself working with couples, here are a few things to keep in mind. Try to think of the two figures as one. Another helpful hint would be hire models that look good together in style, age, and height. Ideally, they shouldn't be more than 2 inches apart. And from about 5'7" to 5'10" is a good height. Begin by finding a pose that works well for one model. Then have the other work around it for 10 frames or so. As the models change their stance, make sure that they still relate to one another. The poses should be complementary. Another point I'd like to share is the one relating to movement. It will be an easy shoot for both model and photographer if you ask your model to move one arm, leg, or shoulder at a time. Also, both arms on each model should be at different angles. Each should be telling different stories. All the tips we've talked about in posing are, of course, up to you in how you use them. But I've found that injecting humor into a model's posing is fun. You'll be surprised how much you'll like the images, and the models will have an opportunity to have a little more fun. Keep in mind that an experienced model will have a natural instinct for work in front of the camera. A good model will, very naturally, pose herself in pleasing and photographic ways. With this type of model, all you may need to do is make very minor adjustments throughout the session. However, the inexperienced models will require much more input from you as the director. It may be that the easiest way for you to get what you want may be through example rather than suggestion. So you may find yourself having to do a little modeling yourself. Don't be shy. One of the best ways for you to get a good feel for poses, looks, and techniques will be for you to look at a lot of different photographers' work. Study ads, posters, magazines, anything you can get your hands on. That will be your best teacher. As a matter of fact, don't hesitate to bring examples that you like to your photo session to show your model. This will give them a very clear idea of what you're trying to achieve. Good luck. This should be one of the most rewarding and exciting parts of your job as a glamour photographer.